So, okay. So, Secretary Romanski, I'll turn it over to you for.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. And I guess this is why it's good to have a chair and a vice chair for these very instances. So thanks for your willingness to step in. Everybody else, thanks for your continued engagement on this really important issue. The feedback that we get is great. Also, I don't know if Craig is online or not, but I wanted to thank him for hosting me for a visit recently. He's got a great facility right on Lake Michigan with the awesome location and a really wide distribution. So I've had a chance to visit a couple of your facilities and I appreciate that. It's always good to get that perspective. Some good news is that the governor's budget includes funding for another 2 years for the Wisconsin Initiative on Ag Exports. So we appreciate that Governor Evers and the legislature continue to prioritize this funding to help expand Wisconsin agriculture and food exports. There's a lot going on at all times with DACCAP's International Agribusiness Center team. Keith, as you were saying a little bit earlier, turn it over to good staff and things happen. So we're really fortunate to have the team in place that we do. Today you'll get a quick review of last year's activities and what we have in store for the upcoming year. I also wanted to share, so I'm a member, Wisconsin is a member of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. Ted McKinney is the CEO at NASDA, and he's somebody who's trying to encourage states to promote trade and get products out in the international marketplace. I had a chance to share with him our International Agribusiness Center newsletter recently, which I hopefully you're all getting. And his response is, this is terrific and very thorough. He's forwarding it to other NASDA staff and members. He said, thanks for sending it and for its quality. So I just wanted to share with you that, you know, Wisconsin gets pretty good remarks and marks from our national association as well. And I think we're fortunate to have the support we have through what the governor and the legislature have agreed on. And we're glad we have our team to help execute the plan. So with that, I'll pause there. And I think, do we have Missy Hughes on?
Yes.
Okay. I'll hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Missy Hughes from the Economic Development Corporation.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Secretary Romanski. It's good to see you. Good to see everyone. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. We are headed out tomorrow on a trade venture with the governor to Europe. And so filling out some final details and getting things ready before that is our main focus. But I'm thrilled to have a couple members of my team here to help with the meeting today. So my job today is just to welcome everybody and to thank everyone for the continuing collaboration between WEDC and DACCAP and the export councils in our effort to continue to increase exports for Wisconsin agriculture. I can tell you that the effort behind the council has really, I think, given us the energy and the push to keep working on collaboratively, that's a hard word to say, on a number of different things. I know that Secretary Romanski and I have spent a bunch of time together in the last little while here as we explore opportunities that are coming into Wisconsin that will increase our opportunities for our farmers and the supply chain on that. And the teams are also continuing to work on opportunities to look outside to other markets. We have already been collaborating, as I mentioned, on the trade venture that we're taking to Europe, and the governor and I will have a few different visits that are focused on different aspects of agriculture and opportunities for Wisconsin agriculture. And then we're looking at trade ventures into the future, including planning a joint trade venture to Mexico. And then hopefully we will have a joint trade venture that will start to develop to China, which of course are two of the biggest markets for Wisconsin exports and are incredibly important. We also have seen great success with some of our IMAGs, which is the International Market Access Grant, with a focus on agricultural exports and teaming up with JACCEP to identify those companies that would benefit from that program and bringing them through the program, which is really about teaching businesses how and where they might be able to expand their opportunities globally. So it's really exciting to be able to continue this work together. Secretary Romanski and I are continually looking to carry forward the governor's mission of connecting the dots. And I think this is an extremely excellent example of the opportunities to do that and our work doing that. So thank you again for your work on the council, and Secretary Romanski, I will hand it back over to you.
Thank you. And I think, sir or sirs.
Very good. Well, I think I can officially hand the gavel if I back over to Chad as the chair. So Chad, over to you.
We'll mark that as the shortest reign of council thus far.
The strongest. So I apologize for being late. I was over doing the security clearance stuff for the USDA. Things within this group continue to roll along really well. Mark and the team have had some amazing success that they'll cover off on today. We have 2 meetings like this a year where we have official board meetings and we fill in the holes with a lot of webinars. And so folks that are out there that have topics that they would like to have insight into, experts brought in, areas of concern, areas of growth opportunities, please bring those forth. I'm going to let the day roll. I really don't have much more to add, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing and having everybody here sharing all the exciting things that have been happening with the team here. And we have roll call now.
Yeah, let me just call out everybody, and I do think we already do have a quorum, but Brian Cummins, Jackie Fett is online. Charles Waxmuth is online. Ryan Wucher is online. Keith. Evan Lips. Larry's here in the room. Jeff Schwager's here in the room. Bob Fitzgerald couldn't make it today. Craig Brees. Bob Wilson couldn't make it today either. Brandon Bickham is online. Chad, you're here. Amy. Kevin's here. Senator Smith. No. Joan couldn't make it. Senator Joan Baldwin couldn't make it. Dave Considine. And Representative Kurtz, I don't see him online. So Katie Sinnott is with us as well online. She'll be joining us later to speak. All right, we do have a quorum.
That's now the approval of March 29th minutes. If anybody has read or has any questions about the minutes, then I'll ask for a motion. So second, been moved and seconded, and council approved the minutes from March 29th, 2023. Any discussion? No discussion, then we'll all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The motion carries. And motions are approved. The secretary recorded who we had moved and who seconded. We had Keith and Kevin. Great. We now have time for public comments. If there's anybody out here that has, did anybody file in advance to provide any comments?
No.
Do we have anybody that would like to provide comments this morning? Okay, that's it. Moving on. And now we turn it over to Mark for year to date.
Thank you, everybody, and hope you're able to hear all right. Great. So year to date, Q2, that's up to June of this year. Exports reached $2 billion. That's our second highest year to date Q2 on record for this period of time. And the top 10 markets that make up 80% of the total of those, Mexico and Netherlands, are up in double digits. And just to read off those top 10, top 5 are we talk about on a pretty regular basis, and those pretty much stay the same. Canada, Mexico, China, Korea, and Japan. Those are the top 5. The next 5 after: Germany, Netherlands, Australia, UK, and Vietnam. There are changes within those last 5 that we see year on year, but those top 5 tend to be fairly regular for us. And as you can see by the chart there, gotta pull that out of the way so you can actually see the.
I didn't know who was saying. I was gonna text Lisa, so.
Who's got that? So as we saw, 2021 was our record year. That's the base year for WIAE. And looking at results, but then we hit another record in 2022, $4.22 billion. We're at $2 billion year to date. That's June. So strong start of the year as we look at where we're at. USDA is forecasting a decline in agricultural exports by the end of 2023. A lot of commodities feed into that number. Some headwinds to look at, but we've got a strong first half of the year. And we wanted to take a look just quarter by quarter to see where we were at, because we don't often do that. So as you can see, that 2022 and that spike shows that was at the half year quite strong, but also 21. But you notice that we're above this year, above that 2021 number. Of that, we are about $30 million ahead of 2021. Top 10 products make up about nearly 70% of the total, but of those, sauces and yeasts, soybeans, meats, those are all up in double digits in those product categories by their harmonized system number, that HS number. And year to date, we're number 10 in the US for exports. We normally run, and that's on a quarterly basis, as well as the year end, we typically run around 13th in the US for agricultural exports. So we've actually climbed up a bit, and we're ahead of some of our neighbors like Minnesota and Indiana, not that we're close neighbors, but and Pennsylvania, Missouri, Tennessee, and Ohio. We're ahead of those states and in terms of rank in the US. And of course, a lot of those coastal states with seaports are the ones that typically are the top level, because they collect a lot of exports from around the country. Total dairy exports, 254 million. That includes cheese and curds, whey, lactose, and milk proteins. That's the most of what we're exporting. Cheese and curds, especially in whey, those are really the 2 largest categories. In that, top 5 countries make up nearly 70% of the total. China and Mexico are up in the dairy category. And Mexico is important for us as that's a next door neighbor market, and we'd like for them to be up. As we've spoken before, they had been perennially number 2 market for us, but then over the last few years had actually dropped to 3rd and occasionally into 4th place. So it's good to see a strong Mexican market. The next 5 countries, of those top 10 though in dairy are all up double digits. So that's good indicator, good for dairy. You've got that helping to keep those numbers up. Japan and Korea are down. Believe that that's mostly affected by the strong dollar exchange to the yen and to the won. Yen, Japan, won, Korea. In meat exports, and meat in this category not only includes meat cuts and meat preparations like brats and sausages, but also livestock, genetics, embryos, as well as hides and furs. And then the meat proteins and some of those byproducts from rendering of meat. $411 million. The top 5 countries again make up about 70% of the total. And in this case, Japan and Korea are up. So despite the strong dollar to the yen and won, they were actually ahead of last year at the same time. And then similar to dairy, the next 5 countries in the top 10 are up, and then 3 are in double digits. Turkey, interestingly, just stood out in the numbers is up 450%, relatively small market, but that was largely due to live animal exports. So again, that livestock export number. And then crop, that's the third category that we take a look at. And that includes certainly grains, corn, soybeans, but also wood products and sauces, food preparations, beverages and ethanol, those things that would be made from plants throughout. So 1.34 billion, it's a large category because it really incorporates a big chunk of what we do agriculturally. Top 5 markets. That's a bit more diverse, as you can see. That's 53% of the total. And Mexico up with soybeans and those prepared food preparations, those sauces. And the Netherlands, interestingly, up enzymes, which we don't often see in these categories, and prepared vegetables. And those are both up double digits. Overall, soybeans and prepared cereals, milling products have double-digit increases to date. So strong, and a strong first half of the year, certainly for soybean exports that we've seen. So before we move on to the next step in this is that the International Agribusiness Center, through our initiatives funded by the Wisconsin Initiative for Agricultural Exports and other sources, along with our Wisconsin and federal partners, is helping to make sure that Wisconsin agricultural exporters are in the best position to keep and grow their share of international markets. And to use a term that we heard recently from one of our major exporters of prepared vegetables, to increase our share of stomach around the world. And so I think this is a good point to lead into the discussion with our industry leaders in those 3 categories: dairy, meat, and crop. And Randy, if you would take that forward to
Sure.
moderate.
You bet. Yeah. So the good news is I think we're running a little bit ahead of schedule. And we've set aside, I believe, an hour for this conversation because we want to hear it directly from some of the industry leaders. So what we've done is we'll set it up. We've set up so Jeff Schwager from Sartori, Keith Heikus from Urus and genetics industry, and Brandon Bickham from DeLong all agreed to do some presentation, and then we can have Q&A. Let's hold Q&A for after each segment. So we'll start with Jeff. Jeff, if you want to give, you got a lot, we've got time to play with, so go ahead and go. But if we could look around 10 minutes as kind of our boundary and then see how it goes from there. But we'll start off with Jeff Schwager from Sartori in the dairy industry.
Thanks, Randy. I do think when we look at exports, it is, especially in the specialty cheese world, it is something that continues to do. Our company, we currently sell product in over 50 countries around the world. Growth this year is another solid year. It's going to be somewhere over 20% growth, but it's accelerating as we get towards the end of the year here, which is nice to see. When we look at the markets out there, the key things that I think are inhibitors to us growing faster are the common name issue. And that's mainly the European market is closed off to the cheese world for a lot of products. But the interesting thing, when we started exporting into Europe in 2010, we did some market research. And the European consumer at that point, 2% of the European consumers felt that the United States, Wisconsin in particular, made cheese that was equal to or better than European cheese. We repeated that market research a year ago, and that number of the European consumer now is 61% feel that Wisconsin makes cheese equal to or better than Europe. Which, and it's a pretty short period of time, and really for a closed market. We sell there, but we have to use different names. So we're having to educate the consumer on what that cheese is. And I can't say enough for the grant programs, whether it's the education side, the trade show support, the different grants for initiatives. I think it's important for everybody to understand, at least in dairy, yeah, that money's there, but that doesn't cover everything. When I look at it on our side of it, yeah, we've participated in that. And early on, when we were first starting, we spent $3 for every dollar that we got in grant or support. Today, we spend about $22 for every dollar we get in support to advance it. So I think this is an example of really good public and private cooperation. The other thing that we tend to fight all the time are I'll say tariffs in the different markets. Don't know if there are any opportunities to, deal with that from unique to Wisconsin with some of these countries. Largest one is Canada with their quota that they have up there. Our business up there is strong, but because of the lack of quota, once they've used up quota-free shipments, the tariff in Canada on dairy is 232%, which basically takes us out of the market. The situation up there is quotas held with very few things. There's games being played with it. But, I do think there might be opportunities for us to work directly with the Canadian government to have special consideration. The consumers up there, meaning the grocery stores in general, have committed, told us that if we had more quota, we would at least double, if not triple, our business immediately. Because that's how popular the product is, but it's a limit and what we can sell up there either in and out. As the slides we went through before, those markets are key. When you look at it, our growth rates are pretty similar to the key countries that are mentioned on the dairy side. But a very, very strong year for Sartori, as well as a number of the other specialty cheese manufacturers. There is an appetite around the world for Wisconsin specialty cheese. Sorry, I didn't take my 10 minutes, but
It's okay. That's okay. I've written down a couple of questions, but I want to open it up to the group. Questions or comments for people in the room about what he's just covering?
I've got a question. So you mentioned essentially what tariff rate quotas for. Are there any other general tariff challenges you have for other regions, Europe, Asia?
Brazil's a big one from the standpoint that because of the currency difference that we have, and then you throw a 30% plus tariff on it, and Europe has basically free trade with Brazil on cheese. So it basically locks us out of that market as well. We deal with it with China. And the interesting thing in China, at least for specialty cheese, yeah, there's a tariff, but it's still at a price that's an affordable luxury for a group that doesn't have a lot of dairy in their diet. So the people that do, they're willing to pay for it. That tariff, as we try to expand further, and I'll say take everyday dairy into that market, that tariff will be an impediment.
Ask one follow-up question. Is there a balance in the tariff rates between some of the countries, or is it imbalanced?
I mean, there's an imbalance. I can point to the European Union as a perfect example. They pay less to bring cheese here than we pay to take cheese into Europe. Per pound or per kilogram basis.
Beyond that, just the political barrier, just the hidden barriers. Yeah.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Jeff. Charles has his hand up online. Charles, go ahead.
Yeah, my question would be is how are you competing in Europe where you have to change the name? Like how is your Parmesan product doing in Europe? Or things like that where the traditional local cheeses have the rights to specific names.
So we do not sell our Parmesan in Europe as Parmesan. We will sell that into some food service accounts that are basically US or North American companies that have operations there. And for our Parmesan, we have to call it hard grating cheese, which sounds real appetizing and romantic compared to Parmesan. But so we sell our Bella Vitano in Europe. And it's a name we developed for a product here with the intent of being able to export it to get around the naming convention issues. But it takes a lot more money from a marketing standpoint to educate the consumers.
From a GI perspective, is it Europe the biggest challenge, or is it other places that Europe has for FTAs with? And is that growing around the world?
Yeah, I will be blunt. The Europeans are kicking our tail ends around the world.
Absolutely.
When we started exporting in 2010, we were limited to about 12% of the markets for Parmesan Asiago that we didn't have access to. Today, that number is 58%. That's all because Europe's doing a better job of doing individual trade agreements, bilateral trade agreements, which were a US strategy a number of years ago. And we've gone to large comprehensive trade agreements and we don't get them done.
Other questions from the room or anybody online?
Where do you think the biggest opportunities are for specialty cheese around the globe?
Biggest opportunities, I think Brazil is a huge opportunity. I think China is a huge opportunity. I think Europe is an incredible, it's a developed cheese market. And if we could, with them having access to our market, if we had access to their market, and seeing the way consumers react to, it's not just Sartori, it's Wisconsin specialty cheese, US specialty cheese. That if we did not have the common name issue, that would take off significantly. It's the largest cheese market.
Go ahead.
I'm curious about, is there anything that we can do as a state? I mean, a lot of the trade agreements are international, right? With the US, are there things we can do as a state? I'm just curious, besides encouraging a federal level.
I mean, I think it's encouraged federal, and I will, compliment Senator Baldwin. She has been really the individual in Washington that has been a huge supporter of dairy and trying to keep this in front of our legislators in Washington. I think the federal government has to deal with it, but we have to be the squeaky wheel to make sure that, it's not just a few companies doing it. The state's got to be pushing it with the federal government too.
And the other question would be, you mentioned that you think the Canadian government might be open, perhaps, to doing something about their tariff or their limits? Is that
Potentially with the state.
potentially with the state? Can you explain more of that, or?
They do it already, like with the automotive industry
Okay,
in Michigan.
exchange things, sure.
And, you know, would they consider it?
I can actually add a little bit of detail on that. The TRQ issue is something that's kind of arisen out of the USMCA. United States-Mexico Canada agreement was reached a while back, and that was supposed to iron out some of these inequalities that exist in the marketplace. TRQs from the Canadian market was one of the things that kind of popped up as a sticky issue. It was supposed to have been resolved. The United States was supposed to get some additional market. I'll use the word you used, Jeff. There may be some games being played there, some liberties perhaps being taken, at least on appearance, that there's a tribunal that's set up to mitigate disagreements about the enforcement of USMCA. And the US has brought that before this tribunal, and actually that group has said, yeah, in fact, Canada, you do need to do something to fix the TRQs to try and open this marketplace, as was negotiated by the US with Canada. Canada, I'm in the weeds a little bit here, so I apologize, but Canada has responded and said, well, you know, here's what we're actually doing. And in reality, the US has again gone back and said, that's not the letter of the law. You need to cut these quotas loose so that there's better access for Wisconsin, I'm going to say Wisconsin, but for US product. So that's a long and complicated process. Getting an agreement like that in place takes a while. Enforcing that kind of agreement is a challenge as well. So that's what's happening on that end. I can tell you that at our last Midwest Association of State Departments of Agriculture, there were folks from Canada there. So I had the opportunity to say in our open discussion and then in some follow-up conversation that, you know, obviously we would like to have access to the market the way it was intended. And we'd like to try and find ways that we can make that happen. I'm glad you mentioned the agreements. We had some discussion about that as well. Would there be interest in doing some sort of agreement? Of course, we're one state working with the Canadian government, so it's not a binding trade agreement like the USMCA is, but it does kind of open up the opportunities to have markets be considered. So they're open to that. We've had that discussion here as well. And a preliminary indication is there may be some interest on their part to do that kind of thing. I think that would let us get into that issue just a little bit. Kevin, you and I talked previously about doing something similar in the UK. And we had conversations with leadership in the UK as well when we visited there. June of last year. And those were good conversations to have, but in the UK, they've had some leadership changes over time that have kind of put new people in place. So those would have to get restarted. But the chance to have those kind of discussions and agreements is a possibility. Okay, we've got Brandon's hand is up.
Yes, I have a couple of questions, I guess. The first one, most of the cheese is getting exported in a reefer container. Is that correct?
Yes.
I guess I think about Europe geographically and probably their access to ports where reefer containers are available. They might have quite an advantage on us there. I mean, in the Midwest, it's very difficult to get reefer containers here. They almost all have to be repositioned. And of course, you have a lot of other demand as far as, I think mostly meat exports. So maybe there's something we can think about trying to solve from you know, a logistical standpoint to help you folks. And then the other thought I had just while we were talking about Canada and maybe opening their eyes a little bit is, I mean, I look at canola meal exports from Canada to the United States, and they're massive. I mean, we're the largest buyer of Canadian canola meal in the world, and most of that goes into the Western United States, but I think most of it goes into the dairy ration. So is there an angle where you're basically saying, you know, we're buying a tremendous amount of your product, you know, to make this final product, and then you're limiting us on how much we can send back to you? Just a thought about how to tie the two items together, I guess.
Thank you. One other thing I'll mention, so Jeff, when you were talking, I was writing down the 61% say Wisconsin cheese is equal to or better. I actually saw something like that happen during our UK trade mission, and that'll be part of our report later on. But what was the name of the company that, or the cheese monger?
Sam.
Yeah. So Sam from Sartori, Sam Allison, right? And Sam Allison from Sartori was there, and obviously had cheese to share. And there was a cheesemonger from a well-known shop in London. The two of them hit it off right away, and then he tried the cheese. And you could see this realization cloud hit him, like, wow, that is really good cheese. And they were fast friends after that. But you're right, it's getting the product in front of them and making, you know, that whole see, feel, touch experience, which is why those trade missions are so valuable. Getting product in front of any market is such a valuable thing to do. And so we witnessed that firsthand. It was fun to see.
Suppliers to the royal.
Yeah, so Mark reminded me, they are the suppliers to the royal family. So it was Sartori cheese was getting in at the highest level.
And then conversely, in the US, Wisconsin cheese has moved into parity or better in terms of perception with US consumers compared to Italy and France, which is a huge shift in the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's what the industry has done to focus on the specialty cheese market. The value, the quality is really making a difference.
And we often hear from the more commodity type players, you know, asking, you know, what is this doing for me? Because, you know, we still have an immense amount of volume in the state that's commodity. And, you know, I've seen firsthand that when you build the brand and you build the awareness around the best cheese, everybody's boat rises. So it makes it a lot easier to sell around the world and around the country when the Wisconsin cheese, the perceptions of Wisconsin cheese increase, the sales and commodity cheese from Wisconsin become much easier. It's a much easier, because oftentimes it's down to a quarter penny.
Mhm.
Right. And so it's a quarter.
Major challenge? Is it improving, I guess, on that side of things? You know,
It's better
okay.
than it was. We have found, and, you know, comments made, it's still hard to get reefer containers here in the Midwest. So in a lot of cases, we're doing things intermodally and getting it to one of the coasts to.
Because I know on a federal level, we had discussions about a lot of dollar investments into the pop-up ports, if you will, and improving that side of things. But it was the Midwest that was a huge challenge and almost, developing a pop-up port right in the Midwest to help those logistics here, up here, so.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jeff? Okay, if none, Jeff, thank you very much. And you may not have used your 15 minutes, but as expected, the Q&A took us to that 20, so you were right on. Well done. Awesome. And now we'll transition to Keith. So Keith, similar kind of thing, go at your leisure and we'll have some Q&A after you've had a chance to.
Okay, I will, I'm on the council representing Eurus, but after getting the note from Mark about doing this, I talked with our trade association for National Association of Animal Breeders, which represents the whole industry. And so they're located here in Madison. About 10 years ago, we moved the headquarters from Missouri to Wisconsin. And part of that reason is because Wisconsin is the leading exporter in animal genetics in the US and the world. And so every organization, if they don't have a facility here, or if they don't have headquarters here in Wisconsin, they have a facility here pretty well. So I think I just thought maybe it'd be good to go through a little bit of what the industry does, an overview of the industry, and talk about that, and maybe a few trends that we see happening with that too. Last year, and I've got a few numbers on statistics from the trade association from last year, the bovine semen exports from the US were about $300 million. So Mark, I don't know how that matches up with internal numbers here, but it's hard,
About a third, so it's about $100 million out of the state, roughly speaking, for our bovine semen export.
Yeah, and so it's a significant part that's based here in Wisconsin, and I think it's just a general comment. It's really important for the NAB, for the trade organization and DATCAP to work very closely together. I know they've cooperated on several things, and maybe there's some other things they can cooperate on too. So I think that's really important for the industry because again, it helps Chad, like you talked about the cheese, it just helps the whole industry to be able to grow with that. I started in the cattle breeding business in the early 80s. And at that time, my boss at that time said, well, we really don't want to rely on exports too much. That's it's nice to have, but and at that time it was about maybe 10 to 15% of sales. And last year on a unit volume basis was about 60% of the sales were exports for the industry. So to give you an idea of how that's changed, it's grown. Exports have grown tremendously over the last 15 to 20 years. And I've got to get into the weeds a little bit more with a few more numbers, but in terms of unit volume, and I probably put more value in the units of semen that are sold than I do the dollars, because some of the reporting is just, some places have distributors and other places have wholly owned subsidiaries. So the dollars don't always match up quite exactly right. But in 2021, there were 40 million units of semen exported from the US, and in 22, there were 37 million. So down about 7%. The majority of that was Brazil, had a decrease in the export, but 40 million units, 37 million units last year. The leading region, if I look at just regions around the world and where trade takes place, leading region for US exports is Asia. We've done a guessing game with everybody to see how we do that, but Asia followed by South America, and then the EU after that. It's really, and let me just talk about countries too. Then the top country was China in 22. Second highest country was Brazil, and if you look again, this is on unit volume, but Brazil or China was about 2.5 times what Brazil was. 2.5 times what the number one compared to the number two. Third place was Russia. And so, I think, you're sitting there listening to that and you say, oh, there's, when two out of your top three countries, there's some political issues with, and the third one, Jeff, you mentioned Brazil having some issues too. So there's always some potential red flags up there. China, I think is a really interesting story though. I first got acquainted with Randy on a trip with a trade mission to China with Governor Doyle. And what year was that?
2010, maybe?
Yeah, right in that range. I lose track. But exports to China at that time were virtually non-existent. We had a very small amount. It wouldn't have registered in the top 10, maybe not in the top 20 countries. And today, as I said, it's the leading country by 2.5 times. So it's significant growth. So the top 10 countries last year for the U.S. industry: China, Brazil, Russia, Mexico, Argentina, Canada, Italy, Australia, UK, and Poland were the top 10 countries on that. So a pretty good mix of countries, but you can see on that. I think one of the things, and as I say, when 20 years ago, the exports to Asia were 800,000 units of semen. Last year, they approached 12 million units. Just to give you an idea of what the change is, and I think, I think one of the challenges to me and the challenges to a group with like DATCAP is to help. What's the next place that is? How can you help the industry into the next place and so forth? Right now, Africa is very small, less than 500,000 units for the whole continent. And, there's a lot of cows in Africa. There's 300 million cows in Africa. And so I know from a EURUS perspective, we've got a project with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to increase artificial insemination in Eastern Africa. There's other organizations I know that are doing that and trying to establish footholds and establish a market there. But is that one of the areas of the world that is the next growth area? The other one that's continues to be a challenge for our industry to try to be able to do business with and to make money, to make any margin out of is India. And you might say, well, no, there's a lot of cows in India. I mean, the highest cow population in the world. They probably are the largest user of artificial insemination in terms of actual number of doses that there are, but it's all valued at 50 cents or something like that too. So it's really hard to make much margin out of it. But I think that's one of the challenges areas that is a challenge for us also to be able to move forward. But going back, I just think that trying to identify some more of these markets that can be used, there can be some support to help get established. A lot of places around the world, it's a fairly mature market, and you don't need a lot of help in mature markets. Just trying to do that. There's established distributors, established distribution networks, but in the parts of the world that don't have a strong markets, that's a good opportunity. I mentioned what the sales were last year. The industry for the first half of this year is exports are basically flat for dairy, about 0.5 unit or 0.5% up on dairy. We're down 19% on beef, and it is just virtually all driven by Brazil. Brazil is the largest market for beef semen in the world, and they've had a tough time. And we've been very fortunate over the last 10 years probably that there's been a big increase in the use of European genetics, Angus and that type of thing. There's a little bit of a trend right now going on to more of the tropical breeds, the Nelores, that kind of thing, that are more native of Brazil. So there's a little bit of that trend going on. But beef was down in Brazil significantly last year and off this year. And so virtually all that has been driven by a decrease in sales in Brazil. Just as an aside, and this isn't necessarily just for the export market, but if you've heard anything about our industry, there's 15 to 20 years ago, there started to be the use of sex semen or sex sorted semen, gender selected semen being sold. And so as of right now, at least in the US, over half of the semen being sold, there's more sorted semen being sold than there is what we call conventional semen or unsorted semen being sold right now, which is kind of an amazing trend also when you think about it. But many dairy farms in the US now will be using either sex sorted semen or beef semen in their herds and not any conventional semen. Just a couple other things in terms of trade. When we talk about trade issues and everything, most of our trade barriers that will come up will end up being on the like health regulations or genetic regulations that get put in place with the rise of genomics and the ability to genetic test everything. You can find more genetic diseases or abnormalities, recessives, and so what happens is that will get thrown in as a trade barrier in some countries to be able to use, and that's just an ongoing thing. And so you're always fighting that and health regulations. We don't have to worry about shipping containers, Larry. We all of our stuff is shipped out in small tanks that goes on airplane, so air freight, and during the height of COVID, that was some problems because there were so few flights going that we got kicked off a lot of flights on that. But from last I've heard, that's not been an issue now at this point. So I can knock on wood that's not an issue that I'm aware of. So I'll stop, Randy, and see if there's questions.
Thanks. Questions for Keith, either from the room or online. Representative Considine.
How much, excuse me, how much dairy is middle latitudes business by and large. That's where most of it seems to be. How much is heat tolerance and how much of the genetics are affected for heat tolerance? And are you testing for that? Are you breeding for that? I've seen some things about Indonesia, I think, where, they have dairies and they're buying semen, but boy, they're working really hard to keep the cattle cool and having a hard time keeping them cool enough to do any good. So
yeah, there's I would say a fair amount of work going on trying to identify more animals that are heat tolerant, and the trade-off with all of that is in genetics, there's always trade-offs, and we could select for really good heat tolerance, but then the productivity might go to nothing too. So it's a matter of trying to hit the right balance with all that. But there's ongoing, researchers are working on that, and the genetics companies I know are working on that too, trying to develop some of their animals that way, more that way.
Right.
No, sorry. The growth of that sorted semen, sex semen in the US, but I guess related to that internationally, right? Which I would kind of consider more of a value added product. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Right? How has that grown, or is there barriers there?
It has grown. It's the uptake. Let's face it, the US technology adoption is much quicker than other places. And so it has grown, not as rapidly, but it has been on a growth curve.
The biggest limitations that you see for the industry, for you guys, for going on an export side?
Probably, Chad, I think one of the things that, I don't know if it's a limitation or not, but just because of, again, a little bit, maybe the question on heat tolerance and some of that is that there's more organizations. Ours is one of them, and as virtually every other one too, has established more production facilities in other countries. Just because of having health regulations and not as much dealing with health regulations going in, and local production facility where you don't have to have as much concern of currency fluctuations. and all of that. So those are, I think, so some things, if you look at it purely from a US perspective of exporting from the US to other countries.
Do you think there's a saturation point where we've exported genetics and the improvement and the difference between our genetics and theirs? Is there a saturation point where, let's say, China gets to a point where they have a whole lot of cattle that are now native, they've used a lot of our genetics, and that market will shrink?
You asked me that 30 years ago, I would have said yes, but.
That's what I'm curious.
But, you know, I mean, I've seen ever since then, the growth. I mean, I think the thing you got to remember is, and of course, if new technologies comes along, changes things too, but genetics is additive. And the US has a tremendous advantage in having a lot of animals that we have a lot of data on, and a lot that we can select from to be able to do that. And there's different attitudes on breeding programs. And so not only everybody's not necessarily going down one track. And so if the target changes a little bit, we also have enough animals that we can change what we want to do too. So yeah, does it concern you that could be that could top out? Yes, but so far history hasn't said that's the case either. I don't know if that's a very good answer or not, but I think it is. That's the best I can
Well,
tell.
population is growing too, so the
Yeah.
demand is growing. If
Well-
population leveled out, that would affect it.
I think that is a good answer, Keith. And, you know, with Wisconsin having this strong and long presence in genetics and the embracing of researching, like what's next, what's the next genomic sequence that makes a difference. I think being on that cutting edge and having that base here in Wisconsin is a good place to be to address that. And actually that kind of your question led me to one of my questions for you. This is actually historical. You said your first boss said, you know, let's not depend on genetics. When did you see that flip? Just out of curiosity, because it's clearly gone the other way, and the international trade has been a big part of it.
You know, it's been a gradual increase on that. I mean, every year it's just crept up a little more. And, you know, I moved to Wisconsin almost 30 years ago to lead our international division and establish markets around the world. I mean, it's just continued to grow and become a larger percent of the business almost every year. I don't know if was a magic date that changed either.
But that does get back to your question, Dave, of, you know, I assume that's probably part of it, is at some point when we get there and it keeps going up, and that's a good thing for the industry, and it's a good thing for the genetic pool that's out there around the rest of the world.
How important is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I guess besides semen sales, I guess I've just even seen domestically embryos, right?
Yep.
I mean, how much has that segment, it's not as big as semen sales, but how much is that segment growing? For interest in that.
I can. My answer is going to be anecdotal because
Okay.
but it certainly has grown. I mean, we acquired an ET company last year
Well, that's,
because
most of
of
those companies are, you know,
Yeah,
expanding into that.
because of the increased demand for that, and there's demand on the export side of it.
Yeah.
And it clearly is growing. Will it become as big as the semen? I don't think so, but you never know either.
Yeah.
How historically, if you wanted to sell semen, you were doing a lot of showing of purebred livestock.
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with it anymore? Because science and genetic science and all those things have expanded so rapidly. I just wondered if thinking of World Dairy Expo, are we going to continue to show a whole lot of?
Yeah, well, it's not nearly as important for the sales of semen. World Dairy Expo will continue to have a really strong place. I hope so, because I'm on the board for Expo. So but World Dairy Expo, I mean, aside from the dairy cattle show, which a big part of it, and People like to see that and like to be part of it. But it's also a tremendous draw for trade too. And all the exhibits and the trade show and the educational part of Expo too. So that's a big part of that too. But I think whether it's in dairy or in beef, the actual show part of it is not nearly as important to the genetics part of what it used to be. I mean, let's face it, you can learn a lot right now by taking a hair sample of an animal. And didn't know that.
I just think about our county fairs used to be a huge deal
Yep.
to show cattle at the county fairs, and you had big county fair shows with cattle. They're shrunk to, some of them don't even have them anymore. The same was true with dairy goats, which was my industry, and it's like they shrunk. State fairs, biggest in the nation right now, but
And we do use the opportunity of having the World Dairy Expo here, that delegations come in and our team looks for those opportunities to make sure that they're connected to the genetics industry here. There are folks that might be here specifically for, getting a handle on what Wisconsin has to offer for genetics. And we look at that as a marketing opportunity to the rest of the world. Keith, you mentioned, opportunity areas, and you mentioned Africa. I can let you all know that Krista and Luis were in Morocco a while ago, just to try and get a foothold there, just speaking specifically about genetics. I'm also going to Kenya in November, so as part of a trade mission through NASDA. So that's a marketplace that we're probing, and we'll have a part of the summary we give will be a quick run through, and I think Morocco will be part of that. But what do you see as opportunities in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, places like that?
I'm probably not the person to ask all that about, but the challenge gets back to the heat question, and can they be able to operate there? But there's some large production units going in Southeast Asia. Vietnam in particular has some very large units going in and trying to do it. They'll probably have to do, it'll be a different kind of operation than you see when you're driving up and down the roads in Wisconsin. That's for sure. But there's efforts. Indonesia's the same way, efforts trying to grow the dairy industry there. I think it's still probably a bigger cheese market, dairy product market, than it will be for producing dairy there. Because they don't have the culture there either.
Okay, thanks. Other questions for Keith from the room or anybody online?
Sure, got a quick question.
Yeah, Craig.
You had mentioned that some of your markets are in Russia. Is that correct? So how did you manage that geopolitical upheaval? How did you mitigate that? And hopefully everything is a little constrained, still a little contained there, but if not, how would you sort of mitigate going forward?
Well, it's really a good question on that one, because it's a challenge right now, because they are so far we've been able to do everything, and it's always a concern. Even the banks are concerned about, can you do business there and everything else. That all that's been able to happen so far, but they're putting some export requirements on right now that most of it has to be semen has to be produced in country. A very small amount can be imported. They're talking about the limit of only 10% of the whole product that's used being imported. They've also are putting in a place one of these genetic restrictions of a particular genetic recessive that is not even widely recognized around the world. So I think it's going to get more restrictive in the future on that over the next couple of years. And probably if you look at the political situation, that would, you can predict that too.
If I could just make one comment, Krista Knigge, Administrator for the Division of Ag Development. The complements between the dairy industry and the meat or the semen industry, you commented about education, and Representative Considine, you asked about, is there a concern about, are we almost giving away too much? Will the local market somehow be a detriment to us in Wisconsin? And really what we've seen is, as they are better herds and there's a more local production of dairy products, for example, the countries still will rely on Wisconsin, who has a robust infrastructure across the industry. So as their local infrastructure for livestock grows, they need equipment, they need expertise, they need training, all of that they can get from Wisconsin. And they're going to develop a products locally, but not going to likely be able to produce enough to support their country's needs. So they're going to continue to export products as well as equipment and training. So these commodity groups work together really to boost Wisconsin. So just a comment and a point.
Thanks, Kristen. And they'll still want the most cutting edge genetics, even though they've been developing their herds. That's why it's important to have the strong foundation here.
And the Global Dairy Forum's coming to Chicago in another month or two. And, we're kind of spearheading the tour up into Wisconsin, which includes 2 farms, a semen facility, CDR. So it's really intertwined.
Yeah, we're really fortunate. Great. Thank you, Keith. Thanks, everybody, for engaging in the conversation. Next, we'll go to Brandon. Brandon, the floor is yours. Brandon muted. Hold on a second, Brandon, you might be muted.
Brandon? Yeah.
You can hear us.
You have trouble getting Brandon online here. Brandon, you can hear us. Maybe if you log out and log back in again real quick.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, I just hung up. I was dialed in through my phone. I just joined the computer audio and.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we'll get started here. I'll just touch base a little bit on the DeLong company in general, and then we'll get into the export side of the business. For those of you who don't know, the DeLong company is a 6th generation family business, a little over 110 years old. Our business units are agronomy, grain exports, seed, wholesale, retail distribution, and transportation. As far as exports go, the DeLong company is the #1 containerized agricultural exporter in the U.S. We're regularly the 3rd to the 5th exporter of any containerized commodity. Our annual sales are just under $1 billion, and our upright storage capacity in our country elevators is just under 51 million bushels. We export somewhere, depending on the year, between 70 and 90 million bushels. We've got 34 locations, 7 of which are export transloading terminals, where we're basically taking grain and feedstuffs from one mode of transportation and putting them on another. As far as products, we focus on soybeans, DDGS, corn, soybean meal, corn gluten meal, corn gluten feed pellets, some wheat and some sorghum, depending on the year. Unlike maybe our last couple of presenters, our exports are actually down year over year fairly substantially. And I'm talking quantity, not dollar amount. We're down a little over 16% year over year. That's mostly caused by the western drought in Kansas and Nebraska. We have 2 facilities, one outside of Kansas City and one in Omaha, Nebraska, that were greatly affected by that drought last year. The other things that are hurting our exports is bulk ocean freight from the US Gulf to Asia is down about 30% year over year. We compete directly with that mode of transportation. So, it's just making containers a little less competitive. And the third thing that's really causing our decline in exports is a massive Brazilian crop that came online here in February and March of soybeans. I've actually, in my 17-year career, have never seen the gap so wide between US soybean values delivered Asia and Brazilian. In some cases, it was well above $2.50 a bushel. Because of that, we did see some imports into the eastern coast of the US, and I think 1 or 2 vessels came into the Gulf. That being said, we'll get into a little bit about our exports year to date. Now, I'm going to do this a little different than calendar year. We'll do it on our financial year, which is October 1st to September 30th. So all those values will be basically from October 1st to the end of July is our current data set. Okay. Our top 4 commodities are whole soybeans, of which 6% of those are non-GMO specialty soybeans for the food industry around the world. Our second largest export is distillers grain out of the ethanol industry. Third this year is corn, and fourth is soybean meal. Corn and soybean meal kind of interchange depending on the yearly economics. Of those, soybeans makes up 64% of our exports. So we're strongly dependent on competitive soybean values from the US. We are a little bit sheltered from that because of the specialty business that tends to go on fairly steady year over year. As far as where our products end up, whole soybeans end up, our top 3 markets are China with 59% of our mix, Indonesia which is 14% of our mix, and Vietnam, which is 9% of our mix, for a total of 82%. One thing to note about Indonesia and Vietnam, the largest percentage of those soybeans we're exporting there are ending up as human consumption. They're not processed like a non-GMO or a food grade soybean is, but we do segregate them for quality such as seed coat, damage, and we sell what we call a US #1, but it's actually better than that. So our second and third markets are technically specialty beans. They're not quite like an organic or a non-GMO, but we are sorting them for their features. The other thing to note about that is those features really don't exist in South America at this time. So we have a tremendous grip on that market as far as US exports of soybeans. As it comes to DDGs, our top export market is Vietnam with 38%. Korea is 28%, and Thailand is 10% for 76% of the total. Corn, Taiwan is by far the largest importer of US corn by container. For us, it's 76%. That's kind of a unique market in the fact that we're not dealing with the major importers for the most part. We're dealing directly with a certain segment of hog farmers that have their own feed mills on site. So, they're more willing to buy US containerized corn than to buy from another importer that's buying by bulk vessel. Korea is number 2 with 19%. That's almost all specialty corn. So waxy corn, hard endosperm corn, non-GMO corn. So mostly all ending up in the food industry. And then we do a little bit of business in China. It's the bottom 5% of our market, but that is a more difficult place to do business, especially now that they are able to import corn from Brazil. One of the things that's new for us this year, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, is our new facility in Milwaukee. With that, we're able to diversify away from the containerized space a little bit. Currently our containerized markets are almost all Southeast Asia, Japan, China, a little bit in the Middle East, but predominantly Asia. With Milwaukee, we're looking to add countries in North Europe, the Mediterranean, North Africa, and the Middle East, especially west of the Suez Canal. As far as major challenges, and Mark, I also included some opportunities within those challenges that we are seeing is the expanded soy crush in the Western US due to the renewable diesel space or demand. As I've laid out, a tremendous amount of our exports are whole soybeans. There's going to be less of those available, especially in our Western markets, due to the demand for whole soybeans domestically. Within that, there's some opportunities. I think we'll be well positioned to export soybean meal instead of whole soybeans. A couple of things we're doing to make sure we can take advantage of that is, of course, the flat storage building and our new markets that we're going to be able to hit with our Milwaukee facility. We're also adding flat storage at our Chicago location, and we already have that in Omaha to better aid us with exporting soybean meal. So there we do see a big challenge, but we also see an opportunity. One of the other things we're looking at is beefing up our exports off the East Coast. Currently, our soybean exports are about 70% West Coast, 30% East Coast. And the industry is closer to 50-50. So we're looking at expanding on in the eastern half of the Corn Belt to make up for some of those whole soybean exports we're probably going to lose in the West. This goes hand in hand, but one of the things we're concerned about is just long-term acre competition, whether that be for just whole soybeans or especially food grade soybeans or non-GMO soybeans. It's a large part of our program. We're concerned long-term is, how much more can our buyers overseas pay for these soybeans? And as there's more and more opportunities for the U.S. farmer in the crush side of the business, how's that going to look? Especially Japan, which is our largest market. The tofu usage is basically flatlined. Luckily, it's not declining, but the population is definitely not growing there, and they're not using more per person. So that's something that, to be concerned about. The other thing is, with some of the logistical issues we've experienced over the last couple of years, the Japanese market has actually gotten overbought on the specialty soybean business. And because of the reason that happened is when the logistics were so bad, there were a lot of shippers that were struggling to ship out of certain origins. And then once they improved, everyone was able to ship at one time, which is causing a bit of a market oversupply situation. I think that's short-lived, but still something to pay attention to. And lastly, we're concerned, especially in the short term, with the low water levels in the Panama Canal. A tremendous amount of our exports get loaded on the East Coast and go via the Panama to Asia. We will have to divert those either via our West Coast operations or via the Suez Canal, which adds around 15 days transit. That's usually fairly concerning for our customers, but something we're going to have to pay close attention to. The very last thing I do want to bring up, just because I think it's kind of interesting and we're monitoring it. I really wouldn't say it's a challenge yet, but Brazil has been mentioned several times, I think, this morning. So I find this interesting how it fits in. Brazil's ethanol industry, especially corn-based ethanol, is growing at a pretty dramatic rate. Therefore, we are starting to see Brazilian DDGs enter into our export space. Now, the quality is virtually the same. The same people building the plants, or that built the plants in the US, are building the plants there. Even some of the same investors here are down there doing this. So, we're monitoring this just to see how much that industry is going to grow, how much they can include in their rations there. But just something to be, watchful of here over the next few years. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Great, thank you, Brandon. Brandon, can you maybe just share a little bit about the Milwaukee facility, what was done there when you kind of got things off and running, and what your hopes are for that location?
Absolutely. I think it was December of 19, we met with Peter Herthy at the Port of Milwaukee, and just to kind of toss around some ideas, he showed us the property. And that's where the creative juices, I guess, got flowing over the next 4 years with a huge investment from the state of Wisconsin, the federal government, and the DeLong Company. We ended up with a bulk vessel loading terminal that has on-site storage capacity of around 35,000 tons. We have the ability to receive both truck and rail. The rail is CP and UP origins, which has been a big help so far. The commodities we're looking to handle there are DDGS, soybean meal, potentially some corn gluten feed pellets, all for like I said, the European, North African med market. We're hoping we can expand our exports somewhere between 250 and 400,000 metric tons a year. We had our first vessel arrive at the end of June. Our second vessel is arriving on Monday. The first one was distiller's grain. The second one was soybean meal. And we're hoping, to put on some soybean and some more soybean meal vessels here in Q4 before the lakes close for the season.
Great, thanks for that update. Questions for Brandon from the room or from online? Dave?
How has the war in Ukraine affected your business? It seems like that might have increased your business a little bit in some ways. But just how has that affected things? Because Ukraine's a big grain market or exporter.
Especially as soon as the war broke out, there was a massive effect in the near term. Unfortunately, Milwaukee wasn't really able to take part of any of that. But right now, it's kind of status quo. It seems like everyone has figured out how to either handle it, or there's a tremendous amount of Ukrainian grain now finding its way through Romania and some German ports. So we haven't seen any major effect right now, I wouldn't say. Early on, like I said, there definitely was, but right now it seems that most of the end users have found a way to manage.
Other questions? I see that, or maybe Mark, I see that there are 2 items listed in the chat. Are those related to our presenters, or is that something unrelated?
Those were from earlier, the sound went off for a bit, so there's a couple comments around sound.
Okay.
We do have, actually, John Sharkus, seeing if he was able to answer a question from the spectators.
Any objection? Okay. Okay, so what is the question?
So haven't seen it on the chat. So John Sharkus, or if you're still online and available, I see your image there.
Wanted to make a public comment.
Well,
I don't know if you can even hear me. This thing doesn't work too well. How are you, gentlemen?
We are hearing you.
Okay. I have a question for you. I filed a complaint against a large organization called F. I know it doesn't have to do with genetic testing, but I'm trying to find out genetic testing. Tell my daughter, but when you file a complaint with the ATCP against a large organization, are they not supposed to push those through or not?
let me ask I'll ask you this question. So it sounds like you filed a complaint with the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that wouldn't be related to this council. So what I'll do is, if you can put in the chat your contact information, we will follow up with the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection's Division of Trade and Consumer Protection, which is separate from what this council is working on. So if you could put that in the chat.
I
Mark,
apologize for bringing up communication. Doesn't have to do the meeting, so continue on with what you're doing. Sorry about it, guys.
okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. So you've got his email. Okay, so we've got that taken care of. So last call, any questions for Brandon, Keith, or Jeff?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to what impact, I mean, you talked about the explosion of the Brazilian soy market this year, and what's going on in Brazil, and what does that impact have for us in years to come?
Brandon, you wanna take that one?
You bet, you bet. Well, I mean, in Brazil, basically, they're adding a tremendous amount of acres every year. It appears to me that they're getting better at growing soybeans every year. They do have a bit of a quality advantage over US soybeans. And because of the renewable diesel space, we're going to crush a lot of beans here at home. So, you know, unless soybeans take a tremendous amount of acres away from corn or wheat, which seems a little bit difficult, we're going to have a lot less soybeans to export, a lot more soybean meal to export, which, I mean, at the end of the day, that's value added. But we have lost our status as the #1 exporter of soybeans for sure. It looks like we're going to lose that as the #1 exporter of corn here in the coming years. So, I mean, Brazil is just, frankly, from an agricultural perspective, is a force to be reckoned with.
Greg, I have just a quick question about your Milwaukee facility capability. You just talked about, obviously, about the export and volume of export you want to send out to the destinations from Milwaukee. What, if you don't mind me asking, what are the general ship sizes? I don't know if this is too granular, but are you able to use all the different size vessels available, or?
We can handle somewhere between 8,000 and 22,000 metric ton vessels.
Well, again, thanks to Jeff, Keith, and Brandon for sharing some thoughts. Thanks to the group for the discussion. So, Mark, if I remember correctly, were you done with the summary you were giving?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, yes.
great. All right, Mr. Chair, we turn it back to you then.
I think it's time for a break.
How about that?
It's 10:30 now. Let's get 10:40. Does that work, Mark?
Yes, sir.
About where we expected to be on time.
Good, how are you? Good, great.
Well, they were finally able to figure out how to, the USDA and on campus actually
I'm gonna
come in and get fingerprinted.
the Mike, while we're on break here, and we'll come back on.
Figure out how to get anybody to do it other than go drive into Stevens Point. 15-minute photograph and your IDs get fingerprinted.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're back live.
All right, Mark, it's now, it's yours with the Wisconsin Initiative for Ag Exports. 3 expenditures.
Thank you very much. Get the thing back out of the way here. There we go. Move it. Just look at the agenda for the post break. So we're up for, as you mentioned, Chad, the expenditures 2023. Thought what we would do is just take a look at where we are because we're in our just finished our second fiscal year, but just talking with David that in fact, if you think about it, we started the whole thing for WIE kicked off in March of 2022. So we're 2 years fiscal, but actually in calendar, we're just a year and a few months past, year and 4 months, year and a quarter past. So we've moved quite a bit in that length of time. So this is the aggregation of fiscal 22 and 23 expenditures. Breaking it down, number in this category here, this column is the amount for the 2 years together. So 457,000 and some dollars. You can see the product group breakdown for the aggregation on the right here. So 43% dairy, 25% meat, 32% crop, international, and then fiscal 23. Just to take a look, it was $276,000 and some in trade promotion activities for that year. International market access grants, those are the grants that are $10,000 if you've not gone through Export Tech. If you've gone through Export Tech, it's $25,000 per year that you apply for and run the grant. So year to date, after the 2 fiscal years, $155,000 in grants. We built in the plan $110,000 for year 1 and year 2. We're in the 3rd fiscal year of the plan, so that's $220,000 now. And I'll just make a point right now that so the International Market Access Grant, normally the application period runs a little bit longer in the year. We've got the application period is ending up in October. So we want to be able to move, and we don't have a lot of folks signing up for it yet. So we'll be making a major push for that. But I ask all the folks on the council to reach out. If you're a company yourself, sign up. Organizations, talk to your suppliers, talk to your colleagues, talk to your association members. We'd like to be able to make sure we utilize that funding that's available for us for that grant program. It's extremely useful grant program. Everyone who's used it finds it A, easy to work with, B, beneficial in terms of being able to move further faster in their international markets. In any case, international market access grants break down by product groups: 29% dairy, 37% meat, 34% crop. And then export expansion grant, and those were those grants that go to nonprofit organizations. Several have signed up for it. 13, if I remember right, the first fiscal year, 9 the second fiscal year. The breakdown's gone a bit different on that one. So we're over $1.2 million granted in that. 61% dairy, 21% meat, 18% crop. So when you roll all that together, year to date, those 2 fiscal years, I should say, $1.86 million expended. And then we have plans and utilization of the rest of that. So we'll be at that. Do you remember WIAE is $1 million per year authority to spend over each of those fiscal years. And then as well, the requirement was $2.5 million of that $5 million was to go to dairy, $1.25 million to meat products, $1.25 million to crop. So roughly 50%, 25%, 25%. As you notice here, we're 54% dairy, 23% meat and crops, so we're close to those target numbers. We've got 3 more fiscal years to balance that out. And of course, as the program goes on, we track this ongoing. So as we get closer and closer, then we make sure that we'll take on those activities and make sure that we balance out those numbers. So we're in good shape at this point in the process. And again, just to reiterate, sign up for the International Market Access Grant. We want to make sure we're using those funds. So for that, we're on to the next item on the list.
We have Lisa and the trade promotion activity highlights.
Great. And before I get to that, I do want to acknowledge that we do have representatives of our legislators who couldn't be here in person, either in the room. David Morgan is here, as well as others that are online, so that they'll be taking back notes to their legislators that they work for. So we're glad to have them here, and feel free to ask any questions as we go forward throughout the meeting. I'll turn it over to Mark. He's going to highlight the International Wood Buyers Mission that was organized by Jennifer Liu.
So I'm the stand-in for Jennifer Liu. She's actually in China right now with wood-focused activities, as well as some other activities in that market. So towards the end of May, first part of June, so right, in fact, folks were coming in on Memorial Day weekend. We had buyers from Mexico, Taiwan, Thailand, and India. That was in conjunction with Softwood Export Council, American Hardwood Export Council, and then the Association of Wood Importers from Mexico that helped to pull together these 8 buyers that took a tour throughout the state. As you can see, the map in the center and where we went around. So that entire group, it was a pretty ambitious week, starting out on that Monday and finishing up on Saturday morning as folks were flying back out of, they flew into Madison and flew out of Minneapolis and took them around the state. So on the left, visiting one of the sawmills in the region up north. And then Larry, you might recognize the room that those folks are in, or on the right, because one of the mills in the groups we visited was Krieger Lumber.
It was a very, very productive meeting. It's not often you get to meet a bunch of people from so many different countries that are interested in perhaps buying Wisconsin hardwood products, and we appreciate the opportunity.
It was an excellent visit. People were extremely happy with what they saw. And as you note here, we do, when we take a look at these events, we do survey, get evaluations from the participants. One of the things we ask them is their immediate and anticipated sales 12 months out from the activity. So aggregating that number, the Wisconsin companies participating are looking at $2 million of business generated off of that activity. Now that's just that 1 year after, but you expect those to be ongoing relationships and ongoing business. So it was a great group to work with. And that actually follows on from last year. We had a Pakistani group come through, and I will make mention of one of the groups we've worked with, and we've done so in the past, is the Northeast Wisconsin, NEW North. That's the Regional Economic Development Organization. They're extremely helpful, and a lot of the companies are in their region. So working with us, they're an excellent partner, but we partner with organizations around the state as we do these inbound activities. So that's the Wood Buyers Mission, and the next one is
Shirley Macedo will give the update on the UK Trade Mission.
Shirley, are you online? And
I am. Good morning, everybody. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. So June 10th through 16th of this year, Secretary Romansky, staff from DATCAP's International Agribusiness Center, and representatives from 5 Wisconsin companies visited the United Kingdom for a week-long trade mission. We had a business track for our 5 Wisconsin companies, which included Genex, Sartori, Masters Gallery, Marathon Ginseng, and Seneca Foods. We also had a government track that included Tony Rice, representative from the United States Dairy Export Council. While in London and Manchester, the group participated in meetings with food buyers and producers, made retail store visits, and attended market briefings. We also met with government officials to build and strengthen relationships and to increase Wisconsin trade opportunities to the UK. Mark and Secretary Romansky can attest that it was a great week for our companies. We have some high anticipated export sales that are going to come from this, and some follow-up tariffs coming in from most favored nation and things like that. So it was a great week. And I think we wanted to open it up to some of our WAXI council members if they wanted to discuss how that trip went with some of their representatives that were on that. Anybody want to make a comment?
I think we lost Jeff and Kevin from Senate.
Okay.
Oh,
I can just,
please.
we had GenX participated, so we had one of our guys that there, our European rep, his comments back to me were that it exceeded expectations. He made 3 contacts. Remember, it's a pretty mature market for us. He said one was a big no after he followed up, which probably should, it's good to be able to find that out better than find that out later. And he said, got one very good potential he thought out of it, and another one as a fallback. So he was pleased with that, exceeded his expectation.
Yeah, I actually accompanied Luis on quite a few of the visits, so it was good. Cogent meeting was really good, and Grosvenor Farms was great too. So yeah, it was a good week.
I'll just add, Randy, you mentioned Sam from Paxton and Woodfield. So the picture in the center there is one of the oldest cheesemongers, and actually they are the warrant holders to the crown. In other words, they sell to the queen and the cheese eaters in the family. He was quite taken back by Sartori cheeses, and I think he and Sam became cheese brothers, I think, after that meeting, in fact. And so that's an opportunity that will, I think, carry on for us. So that was a great meeting.
Yeah, they've been in business for over 200 years in London. So, and then the picture on the left was at our London reception, and we had attaché Kathy Yao is proudly holding our cheese wheel. And then on the other side, that was when the group went to the US Embassy for a market briefing. Just kick off the mission.
We just wrapped up International Chef and Influencer Tour. This was an initiative from the USDA Foreign Agriculture Service, started out of the US Embassy in Dubai, but it was truly worldwide. A request went out to all the states if they would be willing to host a group of international chefs and social media influencers, and only 3 states took them up on their offer: California, Wisconsin, and Virginia. Our tour was by far the longest in duration for the group. We had 14 chefs and influencers, and I will say the chefs are also media influencers, so there's a lot of content out there on Aquila. And we also had a representative from the Agricultural Trade Office out of our US Embassy in Dubai. So it's a 2-pronged approach. They want to be able to share US food products with international chefs and influencers, have them come tour the states, eat, have chef exchanges. And the second portion is a cookbook that will be published using the recipes from these international chefs, using US ingredients, We will have, the state of Wisconsin will have an article about Wisconsin's food and agricultural industry in the cookbook. And thank you, Kevin, to your staff. Cassie's been very helpful, and your Ag in the Classroom staff in providing content to that. So we're finalizing that, and then we're putting together a whole portfolio of photographs that will be in the cookbook specifically for Wisconsin. So we're really excited about that. That cookbook will be given out by US ambassadors to international guests. So using this in different posts abroad. The countries that were represented: United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Turkey, Thailand, El Salvador, Paraguay, and South Africa. And it was 10 days, arriving in Chicago, transported to Madison with activities here to kick it off, and chef to chef exchanges with restaurants in Madison, then off to Milwaukee with a chef discussion at Potawatomi Hotel, along with the American Culinary Federation Milwaukee chapter, then on to Sheboygan, where Chef Stefano had us at his restaurant. He's very interested in next steps. They were giving him ideas about how to move into a cookbook stage or going on TV, because several of these chefs already have television shows in their own countries. Then on to Green Bay with an event at LiveX, which was using Wisconsin potatoes, and 4 chefs creating dishes using the flavors of their country, and it was all filmed at LiveX, which is a studio in Green Bay, and with events at a restaurant there as well with their chef. Then on to Austin, where we toured Carvalli, and that's where you see Sid Cook at his plant. Representative Kurtz joined us for that visit. And then on to Viroqua, where we visited an organic vegetable farm and talked with Organic Valley, where they actually had us do some consumer testing of their milk. And they showed us how they do that on all of their products. And then on to La Crosse. And then we ended in Minneapolis. But I want to say we also highlighted indigenous foods. So we were at Oneida Nation in Green Bay, and then also ended at Sean Sherman's restaurant, Owamni, in Minneapolis. So the chefs that we met with throughout this tour will have their recipes also included in the cookbook. These people have a wide reach. Over 5 million people have seen the reels and the photographs that they have posted on Aquila Aquila. And over 30 companies and organizations gave tens of thousands of dollars in support and sponsorship to help us to carry out this tour. We couldn't have done it without the University of Wisconsin River Falls, one of our collaborators, as well as the Department of Tourism, and the many, many groups that helped us to really bring this to a successful end. So we'll hopefully be able to share in another 6 months. The book that has been published.
This is the Capitol Police Communications Center.
The first Wednesday of every month, it's the fire alarms. Hear this, and it just so happens.
When an actual alarm is activated.
On for another minute or so before.
Evacuation site.
So we may want to
A test. This announcement.
take a bit of a pause.
And it'll be over quick.
So if anybody wants to see, I can show you the reels and on Instagram. It's all on Instagram. I've learned a few things with this group. They're all very savvy. They post immediately, and they're all
That it?
That's it.
That's it.
Did you want more? Go get somebody.
I still have more email to go to, so that'd be.
We don't know if we'll get another one of these tours in a year or maybe later, but I think they really had, they really learned a lot. These are accomplished people. And we were so thrilled to have them in the state. And as we travel to these countries in our trade promotion activities, we'll be in touch with them. And we're on WhatsApp every day to get caught up with each other. So one of the chefs buys JBS meat as well as Car Valley cheese. And we're hoping for other connections that will be coming out of this as well. So it was an opportunity to really showcase Wisconsin's food and agricultural industry.
If I could add from Alice in Dairyland, they track the number of impressions and activities. And for the first couple of months that current Alice is on, it was 240,000 or so impressions. The day after and she was with the group for 3 days, 2.5 days. After her work with them, 140,000 impressions just happened in the days just following. So there's a lot of, it's sometimes not as easy to measure in dollars, but all that awareness starts to translate in folks beginning to pay attention and opportunities for the folks in the state.
Well, 5 million people have seen these, and then the watch time is over 350,000 minutes of the videos. So it's really quite something of what's happening with this. And it's not just our person in Dubai who's posting, but all 14 people are posting to this website or Instagram, Aquila. So
Stop it.
I'll write it out for you.
Put it in the chat.
We can send it to the group as a follow-up.
If you have your phone open, I can share this QR code after the meeting. So that's the fastest way.
Yeah, we'll get that out to everybody.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Now we're coming up on our promotional plan for FY 2024. We've already done the Chef Influencer tour. That was one of our first activities. Next up is in September, Shirley will be going to Santiago, Chile for the Espacio show and be promoting Wisconsin company and also Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin. This will also be a pre-planning trip for our secretary-led mission in May of 2024 to Chile. October, we've got World Dairy Expo. We've got a lot of things going on. We have international delegations coming in, and we have an importer seminar, an exporter seminar. Cochrane Groups out of USDA will be here for education. And so that's one of our major events every year, and getting a lot of people from different countries to come here and learn about our animal feed and livestock genetics.
Oh, sorry.
Right after that, on the heels of World Dairy Expo, we have the World Dairy Summit in Chicago. DACAP is a major sponsor of this conference. And we'll have a booth there, as well as having our staff attend the sessions. And we'll be there to be on hand to share information about Wisconsin's dairy industry and talking with international groups. And then, of course, some of our staff will also be following the tour coming into Wisconsin so that we can continue those conversations. And that tour is sponsored by Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin. So we're looking forward to that event. November, we have VIV MIA Middle East. That is held in Dubai every year. It's livestock genetics and animal feed focused. And recruiting companies or have recruited companies to exhibit with us at that show in Abu Dhabi. Then in January, DACAP is collaborating with Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin on a cheese trade mission to Thailand. A year ago, we hosted buyers, importers from Thailand, as well as cheese end user manufacturers from Thailand. Found how interested they were in our product and how excited they were about all the offerings of cheese that we have. We, Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, exhibited at TIFEX show in May in Bangkok. We have a lot of interest from that. So we're taking cheese companies with us to Thailand, to Bangkok and Chiang Mai to continue this promotion. We've hosted a product registration seminar for companies to get registered in preparation for this. So we're really doing a full court press in Thailand, just knowing that they have an appetite for specialty and artisan cheeses from Wisconsin and really trying to push that. There's actually right now in grocery stores in Bangkok, there is a promotion of Wisconsin cheese, happens to be Sartori, with one of the importers. So we just want to continue this promotion in Thailand with more of our cheese companies. Then in February, we take exhibit space at Gulf Food. So we're currently recruiting dairy, meat, and crop food companies to exhibit with us at the Gulf Food in Dubai. It's one of the largest food shows held every year in the world. Great opportunity for that Middle East region. And Luis is recruiting companies to go to Morocco to a conference on dairy management and nutrition that's held in March for livestock genetics, feed, and animal supplements. Then follow up to our UK trade mission. In March, we're recruiting for companies to exhibit at the International Food Exhibition in London. Shirley is leading that initiative. So if anyone is interested to please contact her. This is a follow-up from our great reception we had in the UK when the secretary led that trade mission. Now, in preparation for Cial Paris, that's why this is on, we'll be recruiting for companies to exhibit it in Cial Paris in the fall of 2024. We have to pay for the space in previous fiscal year. So that's just in preparation for that fall show. And then in May, planning exhibit space of Wisconsin Pavilion at TIFEX in Bangkok again. And that will be for crop meat and dairy companies that we'll be recruiting for the TIFEX show. That's a major food show in that region. And then in the end of May, Jennifer will be attending the Carrefour International du Bois show in France and recruiting companies to go with her to that, the wood companies. April, dairy genetics and feed ingredients to New Zealand. Jennifer is leading that, along with UW Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory. And Keith also received a export expansion grant, so that's part of that initiative, and working together with our export expansion grantees on initiatives. This is for livestock and genetics. And then the secretary will lead a trade mission to Chile in early May. So we're recruiting companies to go along with us on that. And then in June, Jennifer is organizing exhibit space for the China Dairy Expo. In the past several years, of course, we haven't been able to send people to China. And usually it's the reps for our Wisconsin companies in China that exhibit there, but we're hoping that we can take some new companies along with us. And this is also livestock genetics, feed, and animal supplements. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that ends out our fiscal year.
Sorry. There we go. And on top of that, WDC, we are working, and this is part of the plan we'd put together from the beginning of WIAE, is to partner with WEDC, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, on their trade ventures having a food and agriculture track on those trade ventures, identifying 2 of those in this fiscal year. One of those being Mexico, and then we are looking at a couple of the other ones to decide on which. We're working with WEDC to confirm that later on in October. So the roll-up of all those, it's 16 WIAE funded trade promotion activities. We also do those activities with Food Export, the Southwood Export Council, U.S. Livestock Genetics Export, leveraging federal funds along with these state funds. 49 countries, 129 companies that would benefit from participating. We get full participation, and the breakdown by the product areas: 14 dairy, 13 meat, 15 crop. So relatively strong balance across those areas. And then for more information, certainly there's the link to the site that would take you into the calendar and the activities that we have planned. So with that, the reason we're talking about WEDC at this point, even though the Mexico venture is in February, is because we have online Katie Sinnott and Aaron Zitzelsberger from WEDC. Just very quickly, this is our team, the folks we've been mentioning. And there we are. So Katie or Aaron, would you like to open up and talk about the WEDC trade ventures?
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Mark. I think I am standing in for Katie, who was called away. So just wanted to say good morning to everybody, and Secretary Romanski. Thanks for having me here today. I won't take a lot of time here. We just wanted to be sure that we had an opportunity to touch base on some of our trade-related activities, particularly our FY24 trade venture schedule. As we all know, the personal contacts that occur as a result of these trade ventures and these international trade events really are invaluable when it comes to opening up the international markets and making some of those essential personal contacts. So just jumping into what we have here, just wanted to mention as a member of a WEDC trade venture delegation, companies receive a high-level country briefing from the WEDC market development director before commencing on a really well-organized tour of the country's major markets. At each stop, companies participate in a prearranged, customized schedule of meetings with the companies or distributors whose needs and capabilities align with what they're trying to achieve when they travel abroad. As Secretary Hughes mentioned just at the beginning of the meeting today, we are actually literally in the process of kicking off our FY24 trade venture calendar in just a couple of days with our trade mission to Belgium and the Netherlands. With Governor Evers, Secretary Hughes, and we have a delegation of 10 companies that are accompanying us on that trip. So a really robust group of heading to Belgium and the Netherlands. We really look forward to partnering with Mark and the DATCAP International Agribusiness team this year on the Mexico trade venture and having an agriculture track on that, as well as one of our other trade ventures, as that is to be determined which one that'll be, but we're excited to continue to work with them to flush that out and get that set. Very excited to see how WIAE is helping to move Wisconsin international trade needle for agriculture. So wanted to mention, so traditionally WEDC's trade ventures are a bit multi-sector. That's okay, and that's what we continue to do. We are working to add some things to some of our trade ventures, such as trade shows. When we're doing that in Mexico with Expo Manufactura and in Germany with Analytica. That doesn't mean that the companies that go there need to be taking advantage of those particular trade shows. It's just one more thing that they can do while they are there. So if a company is able to take advantage of that particular trade show, that's great. If it's not something that works for them, then we're going to continue on with the B2B. If they're looking for customers or distributors or whatever they're looking to do, we'll continue to build out a schedule that works for them for that as well. Yeah, as you can see here, like I said, we're on the verge of going wheels up for the Belgium and Netherlands trade mission that starts in just a few days on September 9th. I'm going to just jump over India and UAE and cover those at the end, just because there's just a couple of things with those. But then we have Mexico in January and February, planning on China right now in March, and Germany in April, and Canada in April as well. We did add India and the UAE. We're doing those in partnership, India with the Council of Great Lakes Governors and Premiers, and the United Arab Emirates for, I think that's Arab Health, in partnership with the U.S. Commercial Service. Those are not trade ventures that we have as built out as part of our budget, but we are working in partnership with those organizations. We do think those are important markets and important events to send companies to. So if a company is interested in participating in that, they're going to need to secure either outside funding, or they can apply for an international market access grant through WEDC and take advantage of something like that. So those are two additional events that companies can participate in. Like I said, that was pretty quick, but Mark, can I get the next slide? Sorry. Oh, that's all right. Just to let you know, I think we've gone through this before, but just if you want to reach out to anybody, Katie Sinnott, who is our leader for global trade and investment, but then we have 4 market development directors, and we kind of break up the world between them. So you have Francisco Carrillo, who handles our Latin American markets, as well as Spain and Portugal, Chad Hoffman, who has just a plethora of the world with Canada, Australia, the Middle East, India, and Africa, Fan Fu Lee, who handles our East Asian markets, and Rome Router, who handles all of Europe. If you have, if a company has specific questions related to a specific part of the world, they can always reach out to our market development directors as well. I mean, obviously they can reach out to DATCAP, but our team is also available. And then our team of authorized trade representatives that we contract with all over the world that can help resolve trade-related questions in the event you have those. Katie Udak at the bottom, who is our Global Trade and Investment Grants Manager. So she is company's best friends when it comes to the WIAE International Market Access Grant. So she will work with companies from start to finish, from filling out the application to getting the reimbursements taken care of when that happens, and try to make that as smooth of a process as possible. The application is fully online now through our online portal, which is fantastic. And we try to make it as smooth and quick of a process as possible. As Mark mentioned, the window and the grants window for that is open right now. We are accepting applications. So if you are interested in doing that, you can reach out to your team there at DATCAP. They're ultimately going to put you in contact with Katie Udak, who can help you through the application. But if you have any questions, you can always also reach out to me, and I would be happy to assist in any way possible. That's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Aaron.
Unless there's questions.
Good point.
One thing I'll add, so Lisa and Aaron both just kind of whipped through a lot of activities for the next year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really busy. The partnership works great, and having the funding available gets us to more places. One of the things I'll emphasize, and Lisa dropped it into each of those places we're going, is we are recruiting for businesses to join us for these ventures that we go on. So we'll make sure we'll send out some information to you all afterwards, that if you are interested or know somebody who might be interested, members that might be interested, we'll give you a link so that you can get to the international team, because we want to make sure people know the opportunity exists for them to join us for those activities. So we'll send some follow-up information to everybody about how best to do that and who to contact with our staff.
And they're always listed in our newsletter. All the activities that we are recruiting for are listed in the newsletters. They come
Ours as well. Yeah, you do that as well at WDC, don't you, Aaron?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, anything that all of our trade ventures, you can go to the WEDC website and go to the export tab. All of our trade ventures are going to be listed there, all the relevant information. And then also you'll find any information, a bunch of information on the International Market Access Grant as well. So everything's available for you.
Very good. Aaron, thanks. Just a real quick comment. It may look like overlap, but I would say it's more integration. Think about stacking benefits. So between, if we're going to a place at a particular time that doesn't fit for your schedule, not quite the right market for you, but WDC is going. If not them, then Food Export. If not them, then USLGE. There's a number of activities, but then integrating the International Market Access Grant so that you're preparing materials, that you're doing some of the work in that market, utilizing those funds, not to pay for the travel, but to do the other activities that you require to enter or expand in that market. So as you look at the plan, look at the months, look at the locations, it's really thinking about this as a whole and pulling those pieces together. All right, Aaron, I'll minimize the screen here. Thank you very much. And slide.
We will be continuing with our webinars in between our council meetings. We just had the August 16th meeting where we had readouts from our export expansion grantees, as well as an overview of the Export Tech program. That's a really valuable program. We've been talking about it a lot. And as you reach out to fellow companies to let them know that it is an opportunity to really ramp up and establish an export plan. They might have been exporting for a long time, but this really helps set it down into paper. So we covered that August 16th. That was a request to do that. November 15th, Charles Waxmuth will be leading us in this webinar on ESG and sustainability. I think that's going to be a really important topic for us to cover on November 15th. And then January 17th, we'll have more recaps of our export expansion, but there's also room for another topic if we want to add another topic to that webinar. The next council meeting will need to confirm a date. And I don't know how we want to do that here. It has been proposed March 20th, but I don't know if spring is a really busy time for conferences. We don't want it to compete with anything else going on at that time. If anybody knows of any conflict, let us know, and then we can confirm that at a later date. That's what's coming up in terms of upcoming meetings. Now it's an opportunity, if you want to throw out some suggestions for future topics for either the council meeting and or webinars, would be happy to hear them. One of the things we did discuss with Keith and Chad in preparation for this meeting is try not to overburden you with too many webinars. So we'll only have 2 webinars in between the 2 full council meetings. So it's just a chance to really take a topic to a really high level. We want to do that in a webinar. But if you have suggested topics and if you think of them later, just feel free to shoot me an email. And we'll put that on the calendar and
comment.
Everything.
Well, thanks everybody for participating. Appreciate the staff, all your diligence on putting a good agenda together today. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great agenda, but you know, when you take a look at, and you guys ran through that lightning speed, you know, like 6 or 7 pages of locations and countries and partnerships, and the amount of work that goes into those is phenomenal. Those things, they're easy to do. They're really hard to do well. And you guys do them really, really well. I mean, what we hear back from people, and we're seeing the results. And what's amazing to me is that we're seeing results soon, because in my experience, it usually takes, you're on a 12 to 24 month cycle typically from the time these things happen till real results come in. So it's really promising. On the international side, it's about being there and seeing people and engaging with them and engaging with them and engaging with them, because it takes a while to build the trust and build the relationships where people will want to deal with you and have the right products and understand how you fit. And the stronger those relationships get, the stickier it gets too. So it's really difficult to replace you with somebody else when currency changes, which it always does, or when any of the governmental fluctuations happen that we can't control. Those things make it so that there's ongoing long-term relationships, which is really what the game here is. It's not about one-hit wonders. Those don't pay off. You got to have the long-term stuff. So we really appreciate what you and the team do to put this together, and Randy, your leadership and putting and helping these things happen and facilitating and all the work and the bipartisan support and the funding. This has come so far, so fast. It's really amazing to me. So I appreciate it. With that, we need to have a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
Kevin, and second? Wonderful. It's been moved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Motion carries, meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So, learning all sorts of things about
That was it.
Instagram.
Wow.